Get out of my house. You are a dry tree that cannot fruit a son. Chidi's voice shook the walls as he dragged Nneka into the midnight rain. The sound of Nneka's suitcase hitting the mud was louder than the thunder. I need a male child to carry my name, not a woman who only brings curses. Look at her. Mama Chidi spat on the floor. 20 years of marriage and not a single boy. Pack your things before I set them on fire. Nneka gripped the gate, her fingers bleeding. Chidi, please. Itis dark. The only reply was the heavy metallic click of the padlock. I have found a real woman now, Chidi whispered coldly through the window. One whose womb isn't a graveyard for sons. Goodbye, Nneka. And just like that, the door closed on her life. But what Chidi didn't know, the child he was looking for, was already closer than he could ever imagine. His face was twisted in a mask of pure hatred, his veins popping out of his neck like angry snakes. He gripped Nneka's wrist so tightly that her skin began to turn a bruised purple. I have reached my limit, he roared, his voice echoing through the silent village of Amudi. 10 years. 10 years I have waited for a son to carry the Ike name, but all you give me are excuses and tears. You are a dry tree, Nneka, a dry tree that deserves no place in a fertile garden. Nneka fell to her knees, her hands clasped in a desperate plea, her voice cracking with the weight of 1,000 heartbreaks. Chidi, please. The children are a gift from God. I have been a loyal wife. I have served you and your mother with all my life. But Chidi didn't want to hear about loyalty. He only wanted a boy child to satisfy his ego and the constant nagging of his mother. With one final, powerful shove, he threw her toward the muddy ground outside. The sky opened up, and the rain began to pour down as if the heavens themselves were crying for injustice. Before Nneka could even catch her breath or wipe the mud from her eyes, her mother-in-law, Mama Chidi, appeared at the doorway like a vengeful ghost. She was clutching a tattered suitcase, the same one Nneka had brought from her father's house a decade ago. With a wicked sneer, the old woman threw the bag into the deepest part of the mud. Take your bad luck and go. Mama Chidi screamed over the sound of the falling rain. My son is a king, and a king must have a prince. You have failed as a woman, and you have failed as a wife. Do not let the sun find you on this street tomorrow. Nneka crawled toward her, trying to grab the edge of the woman's wrapper. Mama, please. It is midnight. Where will I go in this storm? Have mercy on me. Mama Chidi stepped back as if Nneka was an infected animal. She leaned down and whispered into Nneka's ear, her breath smelling of bitter herbs and malice. You think this is a pain? This is only the beginning. You will wander the earth like a shadow, and you will regret ever coming back to this village alive if you dare show your face here again. The rain was a cold, punishing curtain that soaked Nneka to the bone. She dragged her heavy suitcase through the tall grass, her feet slipping on the slick red clay of the village path. Every house was dark, the doors locked tight against the storm. She felt like a ghost in a land she once called home. Just as her strength began to fail, she saw a flicker of light under a massive Irako tree. Sitting there, completely dry despite the raging storm, was a strange old woman with hair as white as raw cotton. Nneka stopped, her heart racing with fear. The old woman did not move, her eyes fixed on the horizon as if she were watching a movie only she could see. Nneka collapsed a few feet away, her body shaking uncontrollably from the cold and the shock of her husband's betrayal. The old woman finally turned her head, her gaze piercing through the darkness and landing straight on Nneka's soul. She didn't offer a blanket or a hand, but her voice was as steady as a mountain. The rain washes away the old to make room for the new. The woman said softly, Do not cry for the house of sand that fell. Your tears will build your throne. Nneka tried to speak, to ask the woman who she was or how she remained dry in such a downpour, but her throat felt like it was filled with jagged stones. The world began to spin in dizzying circles of gray and black. She felt her body grow heavy, the weight of her grief finally pulling her down into the darkness of unconsciousness. As her eyes fluttered shut, she saw the white-haired woman stand up and walk toward her, but the woman's feet didn't seem to touch the muddy ground. Then, as if in a dream, the old woman simply vanished into the mist, leaving behind nothing but the scent of fresh flowers. Just as Nneka lost all feeling, a sound pierced through the howling wind. It was the sharp, clear cry of a newborn baby. Nneka's heart jumped in her chest. She looked around frantically, searching the dark bushes and the shadows of the Irako tree. But there was no child to be found. The cry grew louder, more insistent, vibrating in her very bones. It wasn't coming from the forest. It felt as if it were coming from within her own soul, with that haunting sound echoing in her ears. Nneka fell into a deep, death-like sleep in the middle of the storm. 3 days later, Nneka woke up in a small hut belonging to a distant aunt in a neighboring village. Her body felt battered, but there was a strange, buzzing energy in her stomach that she couldn't explain. She remembered the old woman's words and the mysterious cry of the baby. Her aunt, a kind woman named Ifeoma, brought her a bowl of warm porridge. "You were lucky, Nneka," Ifeoma said. "A hunter found you by the Irako tree. He said you were talking in your sleep about thrones and kings." Nneka tried to eat, but the smell of the food made her stomach flip. A sudden realization hit her like a lightning bolt. She calculated the months, remembering the last time Chidi had come to her bed in a drunken rage. Her hands began to tremble as she touched her lower abdomen. It couldn't be. After 10 years of empty hope, was it possible? She visited a local herbalist, who confirmed her deepest fear and greatest joy. She was pregnant. The shock was quickly replaced by a cold, sharp fear. If Chidi found out, he would take the child if it was a boy, or kill her if he thought she had cheated. She gripped her aunt's hand. "Auntie," she whispered, "he must never know. To the world, Nneka is dead." While Nneka was hiding in the shadows of a distant village, the Ike compound was filled with the sound of drums and celebration. Chidi had wasted no time at all. Barely 2 weeks after throwing Nneka into the rain, he had brought home a new wife named Ngozi. Ngozi was younger, louder, and full of empty promises. Mama Chidi was in her element, dancing and singing praises to the gods for finally bringing a real woman into her son's house. Finally, the curse of the dry tree is broken. Mama shouted, throwing expensive lace fabrics over Ngozi's shoulders. The villagers gathered to eat and drink, though many whispered behind their hands about the cruelty shown to Nneka. Chidi stood tall, his chest puffed out with pride, holding a keg of palm wine as if he had already conquered the world. Ngozi leaned into him, a sharp, triumphant smirk on her painted lips. She looked whirlwind. Nneka had moved to the city, changed her name slightly, and started a small business selling local fabrics. With hard work and an almost supernatural bit of luck, her business exploded. She went from one shop to a factory, then to an international export empire. She was now Chief Nneka, a woman of power and grace, known for her kin at the empty space where Nneka's garden used to be, and laughed. "Don't worry, my king," she said loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I am not like that useless woman you wasted 10 years on. By this time next year, I will give you twins, 2 sons to carry your name." The months began to crawl by, but the atmosphere in the Ike house slowly shifted from celebration to suffocating tension. Ngozi's stomach remained as flat as a washing board, despite the many ceremonies and special diets Mama Chidi prepared. Chidi's patience, which was already thin, began to fray at the edges. He started coming home later and later, his breath smelling of local gin. Every time he looked at Ngozi, he didn't see the real woman he had boasted about. He saw the same disappointment he had blamed Nneka for. Arguments became a daily occurrence, with plates smashing against walls and insults flying like arrows. Mama Chidi was worried. She took Ngozi to the best herbalists and even a big hospital in the city. After a series of tests, a young doctor with spectacles sat them down in his office. He looked at the charts and then at the 2 women. He cleared his throat, his expression serious. "The problem isn't with the woman," the doctor said quietly. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper as if the walls were listening. "I have the results here. It is the husband. He cannot father a child. He is infertile." Mama Chidi felt as if the room were spinning. "Infertility? My son? That is impossible," she screamed, hitting the doctor's table. "We are a line of warriors. My husband had many children." The doctor sighed, pushing the paper toward her. Science doesn't lie, ma'am. Chidi's system is not producing what is needed. He has likely been this way for a long time. Mama Chidi grabbed the report, her hands shaking with a mixture of rage and terror. If the village found out that her mighty son was the reason for the empty cradles, their family name would be dragged through the dirt. They would be the laughingstock of Amudi. She looked at Ngozi, who was sitting in shock. "You!" Mama hissed. "You say nothing. Not a word to Chidi. Not a word to anyone." As soon as they got home, Mama Chidi went behind the kitchen and started a small fire. She watched as the medical report curled and blackened in the flames, the words 0 sperm count turning into gray ash. She convinced herself that if the paper was gone, the truth was gone too. She told Chidi that the doctor said Ngozi just needed more time and more expensive prayers. Far away in a small, quiet town where nobody knew her name, Nneka's body was changing. Unlike her years of stress with Chidi, her pregnancy was peaceful. She worked small jobs, cleaning and sewing, to save every penny. When the day finally came, the labor was short and powerful. In the small room of her aunt's house, Nneka gave birth to a screaming, healthy baby boy. As the midwife handed her the child, Nneka burst into a flood of tears that washed away 10 years of pain. He had Chidi's nose, but he had her eyes that were full of light and future. She named him Chidera, meaning what God has written. She looked at his tiny fingers and made a silent vow. He would never know the cruelty of the man who rejected his mother. He would be raised with love, strength, and the best education money could buy. That night, as she held her son, she looked toward the window. For a split second, she saw a flash of white hair and a familiar pair of ancient eyes watching from the shadows of the trees. The old woman from the storm was there, nodding slowly before vanishing into the moonlight once again. The presence of the old woman brought a strange, heavy silence to the room. Ifeoma, Nneka's aunt, felt a chill and hurried to close the shutters, but Nneka stopped her. "She is not here to hurt us," Nneka whispered, her eyes fixed on the spot where the figure had stood. Suddenly, the air in the room grew warm, and the scent of wild lilies filled the air. A soft voice, like the rustle of dry leaves, echoed in Nneka's mind. "The son of the rejected shall become the cornerstone," the voice promised. "He will carry a fire that no rain can put out. He will return to the land of his father, not to beg, but to reclaim what was stolen from the blood of his mother." The baby, Chidera, stopped crying and looked toward the window, his tiny hand reaching out as if to touch the air. The old woman's blessing felt like a golden weight, settling over the house. Nneka felt a surge of confidence she had never known. She wasn't just a discarded wife anymore. She was the mother of destiny. She knew the road ahead would be hard, but the mysterious blessing gave her the strength to face the 20 years of struggle that were about to begin. Time is a river that carries away the old and brings in the new. 20 years passed like Agnes and her sharp mind. Her son, Chidera, had grown into a magnificent young man. He was tall, with shoulders as broad as an Irako tree and a mind that could solve complex engineering problems in minutes. He had graduated at the top of his class and was already managing the technical side of his mother's empire. They lived in a mansion that made Chidi's old house look like a birdcage. But despite all the wealth, there was one shadow that always followed them. Chidera was becoming more curious. One evening, while they sat on their marble balcony, he looked at Nneka. "Mother," he began, his voice deep and serious. "I am a man now. You have given me everything, but you have never given me a name. Who is my father?" The question hit Nneka like a physical blow. She put down her glass of juice, her fingers trembling slightly. For 20 years, she had buried the memory of Amudi, the rain, and the man who had called her a dry tree. She had hoped the wealth and the success would make the question go away, but a son always seeks his roots. She looked at Chidera, seeing so much of the man who had broken her heart in his face, yet seeing none of that man's cruelty in his eyes. "Your father is a man who didn't deserve you," she said, her voice tight. "He is a man who chose pride over love and tradition over truth. Knowing him will not bring you peace, my son. It will only bring you bitterness." Chidera stood up, walking to the edge of the balcony. "I don't want his money or his love, mother. I want to know whose blood is in my veins. I want to know why we are here and why you still cry when it rains at night." Nneka refused to say more, turning her back to him to hide her rising tears. But she didn't realize that Chidi had already started his own investigation, hiring private men to trace her history back to the village of Amudi. While Nneka and Chidi lived in luxury, the world of Chidi had turned into a nightmare. Shortly after Nneka left, his business began to fail. Contracts were canceled, his trucks were involved in accidents, and his warehouses burned down in mysterious fires. He had spent all his savings on Gozi, trying to find a cure for their childlessness, only to find out years later that she had been cheating on him with a local driver in a desperate attempt to get pregnant. When Chidi found out, he chased her away in a rage, but the damage was done. He was now an old, broken man living in a house that was falling apart. The once grand compound was overgrown with weeds. Mama Chidi, once the terror of the village, was now bedridden and partially paralyzed from a stroke. They had no children to care for them, no money for medicine, and no friends left to help. The villagers, who once feared them, now whispered as they passed by. "The gods have a long memory," they would say. Chidi sat on his porch every day, staring at the empty road, wondering where his life had gone wrong and who would bury him when he died. Poverty was a slow poison. Chidi sold his last piece of land just to buy food and heart medicine for his mother. He was desperate. One afternoon, a friend from the city visited the village. He told Chidi about a legendary woman in the capital who was famous for her philanthropy. "They call her the Lioness of Trade," the friend said. "She helps the broken and the poor. She even has a foundation for elderly people in the East. Maybe if you go to her mansion and beg, she will give you a job or some money to save your mother. Her heart is said to be as big as the ocean." Chidi looked at his ragged clothes and his trembling hands. He had once been a man of great pride, but hunger has a way of swallowing pride whole. He looked at his mother, who was gasping for air on a dusty mattress. He had no choice. He gathered the last of his coins, took a bus to the city, and spent 2 days searching for the address of the great woman. He finally reached the gates of a massive estate that took up half a street. He stood there, a tattered shadow of a man, looking at the high walls and the security cameras. The gates of the mansion were made of solid wrought iron, decorated with gold leaf. Chidi approached the security guard at the gatehouse, his voice shaking. "Please, sir," he begged. "I have traveled from Amudi. I need to speak with the great madam. My mother is dying, and I have nothing left." The guard looked at the old man with pity, but shook his head. "The madam is a busy woman. She doesn't just see anyone from the street." Chidi didn't leave. He sat by the gutter, his head in his hands, waiting for hours under the hot sun. He felt a strange sense of fate, as if he was meant to be here. Suddenly, the heavy gates began to groan and slide open. A sleek, black luxury car began to drive out, followed by 2 security vehicles. Chidi jumped up, waving his hands frantically. "Please, stop. Just 1 minute." The lead car slowed down, and the back window rolled down halfway. Chidi ran to the side of the car, falling to his knees in the dust. "Madam, please, have mercy on a poor man. I have lost everything." The window rolled down the rest of the way, revealing a woman with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 years. Chidi froze. The air seemed to leave his lungs, as if he had been punched in the stomach. The woman in the back of the car was dressed in silk that shimmered like the sea, and her neck was adorned with expensive coral beads. Her face was older, yes, but there was no mistaking those features. It was Nneka. The woman he had thrown out like trash 20 years ago was now the queen of this empire. Nneka looked at him, her expression unreadable. She didn't scream, she didn't laugh, and she didn't show any sign of anger. She simply stared at him as if he were a ghost she had long ago stopped fearing. Chidi's mouth hung open, but no words came out. He looked at her perfectly manicured hands and then at his own dirt-caked fingernails. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like lead. Nneka leaned forward slightly, her voice calm and cold. "Do I know you, old man?" she asked. The question was a dagger. Chidi realized she wasn't just powerful, she was untouchable. He tried to speak her name, but it died in his throat. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned to her driver. Give him some water and a small amount of money. He looks like he's had a long journey from the past." The car drove away, leaving Chidi standing in a cloud of dust, clutching a thick envelope of cash. He should have been happy, but he felt a shame so deep it burned his skin. He returned to the gate the next day, and the day after that. He didn't want the money anymore. He wanted to explain, to beg for a forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. On the third day, Nneka agreed to see him. He was led into a massive living room with ceilings so high he felt like an ant. Nneka was sitting in a high-backed velvet chair, watching him with those cold, steady eyes. Chidi fell to his knees immediately, his forehead touching the marble floor. "Nneka, I didn't know," he sobbed. "I was a fool. My mother, she pushed me, and my pride blinded me. Please, I have suffered for 20 years. Every day has been a curse since you left." Nneka didn't move. "You didn't dump your wife, Chidi. You dumped a human being into a storm at midnight because of a son you couldn't even produce. You blamed me for your own emptiness." As she spoke, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. A young man walked into the room, carrying a tablet and looking focused. The young man stopped mid-stride when he saw the ragged man kneeling on the floor. Chidera looked at his mother, then at Chidi. The resemblance between the two men was so striking that for a moment, the room felt like it was echoing. Chidera had the same jawline, the same forehead, and the same way of standing. Chidi looked up, and as Chidera asked, his voice echoing through the hall. Chidi felt a strange, magnetic pull toward the boy. He didn't need a doctor or a test to tell him who this was. This was the son he had prayed for, the son he had destroyed his life to get, standing right in front of him in the house of the woman he had rejected. Chidi reached out a trembling hand toward Chidera. "My son," he whispered, his voice cracking. Chidera stepped back, his eyes narrowing. He looked at the man's tattered clothes and his desperate face, then back at his mother's calm, pained expression. The pieces of the puzzle he had been collecting for months finally clicked into place. Before Chidera could respond, the front door opened and a taxi driver helped a frail, shaking old woman into the foyer. It was Mama Chidi. She had used the money Nneka gave Chidi to hire a car to follow him, sensing that he had found something important. She was a shadow of her former self, her mouth twisted from the stroke, her eyes clouded with cataracts. She leaned on a cane, her breath coming in ragged gasps. When she saw Nneka, she let out a sound that was half scream and half sob. She looked at the luxury, the gold, and the beautiful woman standing before her. Then her eyes fell on Chidera. The shock was too much for her weak heart. She realized in an instant that the dry tree had produced the finest fruit, while her own family tree had withered into dust. She sank to the floor, her cane clattering against the marble. "Nneka," she croaked, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. The gods, they didn't sleep. She tried to crawl toward Nneka's feet, the same way Nneka had crawled toward hers 20 years ago in the mud. The cycle had turned completely, and the weight of her guilt was crushing her. The room was filled with the heavy scent of old secrets and new pain. Nneka stood up from her chair, her presence filling the room like a goddess of justice. She looked down at the two people who had nearly destroyed her. "You wanted a son, Chidi," she said, her voice echoing with a power that made the walls tremble. "You threw me out because you said I was a curse. You let your mother treat me like a dog." She pointed at Chidera, who stood like a statue of bronze. "Here is your son, the son you said I could never have. He was born in the same rain you used to wash me out of your house. He was raised by the dry tree you discarded." Chidi screamed in disbelief, a sound of pure, unadulterated agony. He looked at Chidera, his eyes searching for a sign of love, but finding only cold steel. "He is mine," Chidi gasped. "My only child, my heir." Nneka laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "He is mine, Chidi. He carries my blood, my sweat, and my name. You provided nothing but the pain that gave me the strength to build this empire. You are a stranger to him." Nneka reached into a drawer in a nearby side table and pulled out a yellowed, plastic-wrapped document. It was the same doctor's report from 20 years ago, the one Mama Chidi thought she had burned. "You thought you destroyed the truth, Mama," Nneka said, looking at the old woman on the floor. "But the doctor was a good man. He saw what you did. He sent a copy to my aunt's house weeks after I was kicked out, hoping I would find peace knowing it wasn't my fault. She threw the paper at Chidi's feet. He picked it up with shaking hands and read the words that confirmed his own infertility. He looked at his mother, who turned her head away in shame. The betrayal was complete. His own mother had hidden the truth from him, letting him destroy his life and his marriage for a lie. Chidi realized that his entire existence for the last 20 years had been a hollow joke. He had chased away the only woman who loved him and the only child he would ever have, all to protect a pride that was based on a medical impossibility. He felt a darkness closing in on him. Chidi turned back to Nneka, his face wet with tears. He crawled toward her, ignoring his mother's whimpers. "Nneka, please. I will do anything. I will be your servant. Just let me be a father to him. Let me spend my last days knowing my son." He looked at Chidera with a desperate, hungry hope. "My son, look at me. I am your father. I have searched for you in my dreams." Chidera finally spoke, his voice cold and steady, cutting through Chidi's pleas like a sharp knife. "A father is not a man who provides a seed," Chidera said. "A father is a man who stays when the storm comes. A father is a man who protects his wife and honors his family. You are just a man who shares my DNA and a man who broke my mother's heart." Chidera stepped forward, standing between his mother and the broken man on the floor. "You are 20 years too late for a son. My mother is my father, my teacher, and my king. You have no place here." Chidi felt the finality in the boy's voice, a coldness that mirrored the way he had once spoken to Nneka. The silence that followed was louder than the screams. Chidi looked at his son, seeing the pride and the strength he had always wanted, but realizing it was a strength directed against him. He turned to Nneka, his last hope. "Nneka, you were always the kind one. You were the woman who prayed for me. For the sake of the God we both serve, forgive me. Don't let me die in the street like a dog." Nneka looked at him, and for a moment, a flicker of the old love appeared in her eyes, only to be replaced by the memory of the cold mud and the slamming door. She looked at Mama Chidi, who was now weeping silently, her spirit completely broken. The power to destroy them was in Nneka's hands. She could have them arrested. She could have them thrown back into the street. Or she could let them starve. The staff of the mansion stood in the doorways, waiting for her command. Chidera watched his mother, waiting to see if the woman who raised him would choose justice or mercy. Nneka took a long, deep breath, the scent of the expensive lilies in her home filling her lungs. "I have spent 20 years building a life out of the ruins you left me," Nneka said softly. "I have no room in my heart for hatred anymore, because hatred is a heavy burden that I will not carry." She looked at Chidi. "I forgive you, Chidi. I forgive you because my son deserves a mother who is free from the past. But forgiveness is not the same as a second chance. You are forgiven, but you are not welcome. You will not live in this house, and you will not be a part of Chidera's life." She signaled to her assistant, "Arrange for a small house in a quiet town for them. Pay for Mama Chidi's a monthly allowance so they never go hungry. But they are never to contact us again. This is the mercy of the dry tree you rejected." Chidi began to wail, a sound of deep, soul-crushing regret. He had been given food and shelter, but he had lost the only thing that mattered. He had been given mercy, but he had been denied a home. He realized that living with the knowledge of what he had lost would be a far greater punishment than poverty. As the security guards gently led Chidi and his mother toward the gates, the sun began to set, casting long, golden shadows across the estate. Chidi turned back one last time, seeing Nneka and Chidera standing together on the grand porch. They looked like royalty, framed by the light of a new day. He realized then that the woman he had rejected hadn't just survived. She had triumphed. She had taken his cruelty and turned it into gold. He walked out of the gates, a broken man who was finally enlightened but forever alone. Nneka watched them go, feeling a strange lightness in her chest. The weight that had been there since that rainy night 20 years ago was finally gone. She turned to her son and smiled, a real, beautiful smile. "The rain is over, Chidera," she whispered. Chidera hugged her tightly, his strength a testament to her resilience. As they walked back into the mansion, a single white feather drifted down from the sky, landing on the spot where Nneka had stood. The story of the heartless husband was over, and the legend of the woman who built a throne from her tears had just begun. The woman he rejected became the destiny he lost.